All right. So, well, my name is Jacob Sahagun, and this is my senior project presentation. I'm going to be presenting on basically two songs that I've been working on for a really long time. Started out as one song, but then it kind of diverged into two different projects. I'll be talking about that whole process. I'll be talking about my inspiration and then the recording of it, and maybe a bit about the mix too. And so, for a little introduction for the song, I initially began writing the song like last July of 2019. I was sitting in my garage one night where I had my little home studio set up with my keyboard, guitars, amps, drum kit, PA system, and all my recording equipment. It was like a month before my younger brother Matt would be heading off to Texas to begin his service in the Air Force. I was feeling a bit down, thinking about him being gone and so far away from home for such a long time. Like the first time leaving home to be on your own is a major transitional period in everyone's life, and I was worried about the battles he would face both mentally and physically. I felt I had so much I wanted to tell him, but I could never find the right moments, and when I did, I could never find the right words. I had been experimenting with a few chords and a melody I had come up with around that time, so I opened up Logic Pro, and at about 2 a.m., I bounced out the first demo of the song. So I'm going to show you that original recording I come up with that night. So that was what I started out with, and I liked what I had at the time, but I knew it could be developed into something a lot better. And since then, I've recorded a version of the song with my band, The Grunion. It will be on our first album coming out later this year. I also recorded an instrumental version of it on my own, in which I wrote and performed all the instrumentation and collaborated with two vocalists, Ray and Nal G. Before I show you the two directions the song went in, I want to give you kind of a background as to how I started writing music in this kind of style. So learning how to play jazz really changed the way I went about writing music. My first exposure to jazz theory and technique began at Cal Poly when I started studying jazz with J. Michael O'Neill, who's no longer there. and jazz history and improv with Tom Lure. I'd already been playing and writing music prior to my studies with them, but once I was exposed to the world of jazz music, it redefined the way I approached the piano and music in general. Before that, the kind of music I was writing was more like rockish, like 60s surfy psychedelia, where it's just the music isn't very complex. One of the first things you learn in jazz is the 2-5-1 progression. Every jazz musician must know their 2-5-1s in every key and every position. Countless jazz tunes are composed using this progression because of how pleasing it is to our ears. The tension and resolution that the chords elicit pull your ears in and make you feel at ease. What really sparked the inspiration for me was learning about upper extensions of the chords like the 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. Prior to that, usually in like older rock styles, it's just triad chords built up, 1, 3, 5, maybe some dominant 7ths and maybe some 7ths, but it was mostly just triads. I didn't at the time in the style of music I was writing, those 7ths and 9ths stuff, they weren't part of that language. It didn't work with that kind of style of music, so it wasn't even in my sphere of of things to play, to think of playing. But it's these chord extensions that define the sound of jazz. So as I began learning jazz standards, I realized the melodies we like the most are the ones that emphasize those sweet sounding notes. Those notes are much more interesting sounding compared to playing the root or the fifth of a chord. I'd actually come up with the opening horn melody of the song while I was practicing improv over a 2-5-1 backing track on YouTube. And so the chord progression I ended up using for the song is nice and simple, just 2 chords, D minor and C major 7. D minor 7, C major 7. The guitars are playing D minor 7 and C major 7, and the pizzicato strings are outlining the 7th chords as well. The electric piano is mostly playing rootless 9th voicings, D minor 9 and C major 9. And so it's kind of interesting if you build, say on the piano, I'm playing over the D minor 7 chord, I play F, A, C, E. That's the 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th of the D minor chord. But it's also alone, F, A, C, E is an F major 7 chord. So the sound of that F major 7 chord over the D root really gives a unique sound. It's like the majory tones of the F major 7, but at the same time it has the D under there, making the F a minor 3rd. It has a unique sound. Same thing with the C major 7. If you play an E, G, B, D 3, 5, 7, 9 over a C major 7, it's an E minor 7 chord. Those voicings, they really give a nice color to it. It's like contrasting. It's minor over major harmony. It's interesting to note that as you continue to extend the chords by a third, once you hit the 13th, you've now included every note in the scale that the chord is built upon. So really, you could just hold down the whole D Dorian mode and call it a D minor 13. But I mean, we'd really probably refer to that as like a cluster chord or something. But so that was just tiny taste of the infinite rabbit hole that is jazz theory. And although the song does have its jazz influences, it really isn't a jazz song. It may have some influence from jazz, but the instrumentation and production of the song distinguish it from being classified as jazz. What inspired me to produce the track in this way is my love and appreciation for soul music of the late 60s and early 70s. Soul instrumentation usually consists of a drum kit, electric bass and guitars, acoustic or electric piano, organ, usually a Hammond, and horn and string sections usually, and vocalists, which is also reminiscent of jazz, using horn and string sections. And soul music uses the beautiful harmony that we love so much from jazz, but while a jazz song may have, 10 plus chords within a single verse, many soul tunes only use just a few chords or even just 2 chords. It's not so much about the complexity of the music or the virtuosity of the musicians. It's more about the emotion and the feeling that the songs convey. In recent years, there's been a revival of the genre by modern record labels such as Coal Mine Records, Big Crown Records, Daptone Records, and Penrose Records. These record labels are helping keep this music alive by continuing to support emerging soul artists and providing them with quality analog recording, collaborations with other artists, like-minded artists, a platform where people that enjoy this music can go to listen to them and see them live. So I put a quick compilation video together of just the first few seconds of some soul music, both old and new.
So I'll go on in this life in search of love and happiness until I find this thing called love.
The moon was shining as we stared at the sky. We were grooving as the time rolled by.
Yeah, so those are some of my favorite tracks that have influenced me and the direction I've taken my music. Yesterday was actually Lee Fields' birthday. Signed to Big Crown. He's turned 70 and he can still sing and perform like no other. I had tickets to see him at the Glass House actually on March 27th, but that got postponed due to the pandemic. And so if you were listening attentively, you may have noticed that pretty much every one of those songs was based off of 2-chord progression, going from the minor 2-chord to the major 1-chord. Many songs can have the same simple 2-chord progression, but still be made original and unique by what each individual instrument is doing. And I love the role that the horns play in a lot of these songs. They provide harmonic texture, interesting rhythms, and support for the lead vocal or instrument. Now I'll go on to how the song developed. So first, I showed it to the Grunion, the guys in the Grunion, and they really liked it. They were all for bringing the song in and hashing out a version of it that fit nicely with our sound. The Grunion is a 4-piece band consisting of Quinn McCarthy on bass and vocals, Jack Keogh on guitar and vocals, Chad Ryan on drums, and myself on keys and vocals sometimes. Originally, the vision I had for Best of All consisted of more instrumentation than we're capable of playing as a 4-piece band, but we made do with what we got. One thing we did was replace the pizzicato strings that I had on the verses with Jack plucking the same notes on his guitar, like plucking octaves on his guitar. And we also added a new bridge section to increase the variation in the song, since the majority of it is just 2 chords back and forth. And since there's not much extra instrumentation going on to keep the listeners interested all the way through. We continued to work on the song at every rehearsal until we had something that made all of us excited to play it. In the final version of Best of All, we decided to use the lyrics I had for the second verse on the new bridge instead. And I suggested that Quinn be the one to belt out those lyrics with his powerful voice. I thought it would be a nice contrast to go from my falsetto voice in the verses and chorus to his big, strong voice on the bridge. And we finished writing and structuring the track just in time to include it on our album recording session. We recorded the album live in a friend of the band's home where Quinn was staying at the time, using Quinn's portable recording equipment rack and a collection of microphones. In the photo on the left, you can see I'm using my Korg SV1. It's got nice weighted keys and emulates several different vintage keyboards, such as the Fender Rhodes piano, the Wurlitzer, the Vox organ, Farfisa, the Hammond, and plenty of others. But once you play a real Hammond B3 and like a real Rhodes piano, and I used to have a Farfisa organ too, there you realize that there's really nothing that can come close. And if you're looking for an authentic sound, you have to go with the real thing. During the session, I did record my parts with the Chord, but then me and Jack later on took the recordings to the studios at school, and we re-recorded the Chord tracks using the Rhodes piano and the Hammond B3. We're still in the process of adding the finishing touches to the album right now. This recording of Best of All still needs the final vocals to be recorded, as well as the horn solo on the last section of the bridge, and then the final mixing of it. And so I present to you Best of All demo number 2. By the Grunion. I'm going to play the song really quick. I put together a little slideshow.
So sing a song with me and sing a song. Singing songs with me was best of all. So sing a song with me and save us all. Singing songs with me was best of all. So sing a song with me and save us all. Sing a song with me and save us all.
So that's what Best of All sounds like now. Although I wrote the song, there's no way that I could have gotten it to sound like that on my own. That's what's like so cool about working, with the other musicians. The outside perspective and interpretation of something you created allows you to become more aware of the limitations of your own perspective. All right, so on to the other direction that the song went in. So last fall, I was in tracking and mixing class, and we were assigned to do a multi-track recording using the school studios and equipment. And I used this opportunity in the studio to record another version of Best of All, where I perform all the instrumentation myself. This was before I began working the song with the Grenian. I wanted to really zoom in and spend time on the instrumental, kind of as a practice and learning experience. I know there are plenty of much better vocalists out there, so I thought if I could really work hard at making the best possible instrumental and leave the vocals completely up to someone else who I've never collaborated with and who specializes in vocals, it might turn out a whole lot better than if I had tried to do it all on my own. And so the track evolved into what is now titled Sunny Blue. So my class partner at the time in tracking and mixing was Jasmine Gomez. She helped me engineer the recording. Together we recorded drums, bass, guitars, two guitars, Rhodes piano, and the organ. We just had to present the Pro Tools session to the class the day after we recorded. We didn't really have to do much to it. First, I recorded just a scratch guitar track to the song so that I could record the drums along to it. And then I added the bass, the guitar, the Rhodes piano, and organ. The strings and horns on the recording that you'll hear later are still in MIDI form. Due to the current pandemic we're in, I was not able to record the strings and horns with actual real-life horn players and string players. But once we're able to leave our homes again, I'll be redoing the horn parts and stuff with live horns. So now I'm just going to give you a rundown of how I recorded each instrument. And I've supplied some photos demonstrating the techniques I used, but unfortunately they are not photos from the actual recording sessions, as it was long before I began my senior project and the campus has been closed, so I couldn't go back to take photos, but I think they'll do. So for the drums, I used an AKG Perception 820 as the overhead mic. It's a tube mic, so it's got that warmth and grit that I want for the snare and toms, but also has a nice presence and crisp to bring out the cymbals. The kick mic we used was an AKG D12. It's a good kick mic, but I didn't exactly get the kick sound I wanted. It's kind of really too attacky for my preference. I like a kick to be nice and nice and round and deep, like a deep thump. This isn't necessarily to blame on the mic. I think it could be the kick drum that's in the studio at school that isn't very thumpy. I might be just used to my kick drum at home, which I dampened down a lot by stuffing it with a bunch of towels. Kick pedal beater is like the soft kind. On the snare drum, we use the SM57, and I like recording the snare from the bottom. I like the sound of the snares beneath the drum, and then in combination with the overhead, I'm able to get a nice fat snare sound that I like. On the guitars, I use the Fender Stratocaster played through a Fender Blues Junior amp. I use the onboard spring reverb tank and just very subtle EQ on the amp itself. I mic'd the amp up with a Perception 820 as well. And for the bass, I played a P bass right into the recording console using a DI box. But it wasn't a very good bass. It kind of took some miracle work to get a half decent bass tone in the final recording, but I'm happy with the end product. And so you can see that's how I stand when I record, and that's my bass face. All right, so this is me playing the Hammond B3. It has its own spring reverb tank as well, which I definitely utilized. And I used a Neumann U87 set to Omni, facing the Leslie speaker about 2 feet back from the cabinet. For the Fender Rhodes piano, I chose the Woodpecker, a classic ribbon mic with nice low end response. The Rhodes, when it's played in the upper registers, tends to sound pretty thin, so this microphone helped thicken it up a bit without eliminating the chimey tones of the Rhodes. We were required to do a stereo recording as part of the original recording assignment, and we had forgot about that part. So last minute, before the assignment was due, we threw a couple of the Neumann KM184s on the Baby Steinway grand piano, and I laid down a short piano solo. I ended up keeping that piano solo in the final version that you'll hear in a bit. And so that's all the live instrumentation that is on the recording as of right now. The alto sax, tenor sax, trumpet, and baritone sax that you will hear are still digital software instruments until I can arrange to have them re-recorded, as well as the pizzicato strings. With this version of the song, I wanted to take it in a different direction than I had gone with the Grunion, something a bit more accessible, a combination of instrumentation influenced by classic soul music, but with the structure and vocals of a more modern sounding track. So writing the horn parts is what really took up most of my time when writing the song. I would just try different ideas over and over again with one horn, like using my MIDI keyboard, and just playing the song, and I just improvised, a short like bar phrase or something, and then just redo it until I had one that I liked, and then I would use that for. So say I used like the baritone sax sound for that one, and it was kind of a low melody, and so then I found a melody that I liked, like da 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 da, or something simple like that. Then I would take the tenor sax and then maybe harmonize up a sixth above that note. And so maybe the bottom note was an A, and then the tenor sax is playing an F. So the fifth and third of the Z minor chord. And then above that, maybe the alto sax is playing another A. And then above that, the trumpet might be playing a C. Or maybe there's an E in there, like maybe it's the A, C, E. Or just usually I stuck to thirds and sixths in most of the harmony with the horns. I don't really like the sound of fourths and fifths. And it's actually like against the rules to have melodies moving in parallel fourths and fifths. I didn't want long, complex horn lines because it would distract from the rest of the music. I did short melodic phrases of about a bar to a bar and a half on the verses, and then added some little ornamentations here and there. I love how it sounds when horns in a song like are playing a chord together, and then they play like consecutive staccato notes, like da 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 or da 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 da. It adds a nice rhythmic element to the song, as well as excitement and contrast to the other instruments that are mostly just playing long notes. I tried to include that technique into the horn parts wherever I felt it would work nicely. And as for the relationship between each melody, like I said, I'm just mostly stuck to thirds, sixths, and some instances, you can't really avoid a fourth or fifth, interval harmonizing together, but I never moved them in the same direction. They always resolved to either a third or a sixth. The top line is the trumpet, and then below that is the alto sax, and then below that is tenor sax, and then below that is the baritone. And then the two lines below that are the pizzicato strings, just playing octaves of each other. So once I had horns throughout the song that I was satisfied with, I showed it to my friend Ray, who's a really good singer. She liked the song, so I asked her if she would be down to write some vocals for it, and she was super down. I sent her the track, and within no time, she sent me back a recording with her vocals on it, and I thought they sounded great. She did an amazing job in such a short amount of time, but I knew the instrumental had to be tweaked a bit in order to fit the structure of her vocals better. I sent her the instrumental, and then she sang over it, and then kind of chopped it up and moved some pieces around, just like chopped up the wave file, so it didn't really sound cohesive. It just kind of sounded like it was chopped up, and her vocals were going across it. So I took her vocals and then I put them into the session that I was working in, and rearranged the instrumental to fit nicely with her vocals. I basically chopped up, there's like 3 sections of the song that I have, an intro, verse, and a chorus, as far as the instrumentation goes. And so I just, with the material from those 3 sections, I chopped different pieces up, maybe like duplicated some bass drum hits to give like a doot 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 and before it cuts out, whereas in the original recording that wasn't there. That's all post-production. That's why there's a lot of cuts and stuff like that. Oh, well, actually, what's on the screen right now is the vocals, and all those cuts in the bottom line, that's the lead vocal, was taking out the breath. That was the first time I had really went in and took out like all the breaths in between the vocals, but some parts it was kind of too hard to get a smooth cut breath out, like when she says an S or something, because it's kind of hard to define when the S ends and when the breath starts. For those, what I did was I used the marquee tool and I highlighted the breath and then made it its own clip, like its own region, and then I just lowered the gain on that region down really low, so it doesn't cut out or anything. It's just the breath is lowered in volume a lot, and you can't really tell that well. So that was one thing that I've been for the first time in this. And in the process of this, I learned how to even control the clip gain in Logic. I didn't know you could do that. that you can only do that in Pro Tools, but that's really helpful. So once Ray and I had the structure and instrumentation and the vocals down the way we both liked, we hit up our friend Nell G to throw a rap verse on there. He was all for it, so I sent him the track, and with Ray's vocals, and a couple days later, he sent me his verse. Now I want to go to Logic really quick, and so let me see. So this is the session. Here's the horns, and then the violins, and then she did a lot of background vocals. She doubled each melody line, and then added some, doubles of certain phrases. Her lead vocals down here, and then over here is Nell's verse. And so same thing, all the cuts are the breath marks, and then I doubled his lead vocal, and then I added another doubling of it with just on certain words. And then down here, certain words are delayed. Probably could have done some of this with automation, but I just thought I had more control over, over the parameters doing it this way. Right here, oh yeah, so this is pretty interesting. So for the reverb on the track, I used the spring reverb that we have at school, the outboard spring reverb, just on the instrumentation when I had recorded it. Right here, I just duplicated the reverb part where it cuts out, and so you might be able to notice it once we listen to it, but it just adds a delay to this guitar right here, just from the reverb. So I don't know, it sounds cool. So for the horns, since I wanted to try to make them sound as real as possible, so I added a little bit of compression, some 2BQ to warm them up, thicken them up, and then the J37 tape emulator to give them some tape saturation and make them sound nice. I love the J37. I pretty much use it on like every track, but on the vocals, there's not really much I had to do. I put two compressors on these, but they're both doing very extremely light work. One is just kind of dampening down the transients, and then the other is, is kind of lifting the tail ends of each thing. I mixed the drums, the guitars, the piano, all with outboard gear, analog, in the studios at school. So I didn't really have to do much to them. And then the rest, yeah, I didn't do too much stuff, just minor EQ and compression, and then some saturation. So this is the album artwork that we're gonna use. My girlfriend Violet, she just did this the other day. All I did was ask her to do something with like horns and, like a band, like a piano and horns. And this is what she came up with. So I really like it. Pretty trippy. And then on the record players, you see it says Gallery featuring Nell G, produced by Jacob Sahagun. She did this by hand on a drawing tablet in Photoshop, which is insane to me. I don't know how I would never be able to do that ever. So this is the final product. This is Sunny Blue by Gallery featuring Nell G and produced by me.
If I could erase the space between us, travel back to sunny days and
couch feeling lazy, I ain't really had a ton of sleep, really. Like a bad one night, wanna burn rubber and probably pop a willy. Like I'm in a hurry, but there's not a single place I need to go. Guess I'll stay home, work on the flow. 9 to 5 still knocking at my door, pocket full of fool's gold. And a dotted line saying that we not responsible. Y'all are so comical. Sense of life versus a dollar sign. Your heart is so volatile. You can never read my audible with your illiterate spirit. This breath for your ears and you still never feel it. They think I'm a clown in their circus. That's why I just clown 'em with purpose. No taming this line. I'll walk through the fire. Have you looking like Nebuchadnezzar? Feeling so bizarre when I just wanna be outside. Feel my skin glow in the sunshine. Lashes titted, but I see the sunlight. I hope I see the smile sometime.
Medicated my heavy blues, and I'm dreaming of better views. Hard to live up your life inside your living room. The harder that I try, the more that I copy my heavy blues. Do you feel what I'm feeling too? So bad, to see these watching me. So baby, close your eyes and dream on a Close your eyes and dream
And that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Anybody have any questions? Thanks for watching.
I always have a standard question, Jacob. This is Dave Coughlin here. You put a lot of time into this, it looks like. What would you do over again if you could do it, or maybe you still will?
As far as the song or the presentation?
Oh, no, the presentation was good. As far as the songs, is there anything you're hearing you think, oh man, I really wish I could fix that, or geez, I'm not going to do that next time?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I did. This is, I mean, a lot of just comes down to like rushing things, you know, but the reverb, like the instrument reverb on the bottom, it's like, it's just all the instruments like in the reverb. I don't know if you hear it. All right, so it's like that didn't like allow me to control the reverb of each instrument, you know, but I remember like the reason I had done that was because before we had turned in that assignment to tracking and mixing, I didn't have time to run every track through the reverb unit. And so that I would definitely do, you know, each instrument should have its own reverb level.
I agree with one thing Henry says. It'd be nice to hear this without the Zoom compression. So definitely, I know I'm interested in hearing it, just, you know, higher quality audio. Maybe send me a WAV file or something.
Yeah, I could put it on SoundCloud. I'll put it a private link.
Okay.
It's not, I don't think it's ready to go out yet, but and I could send out the link. Everybody can listen. Any other questions about anything?
Yeah, I just have some technical questions. Yeah, again,
Yeah.
it's hard to hear, and we're also hearing it in mono. There is a way to fix that, but it's a big workaround. So you seem to, you know, you have a very retro aesthetic, of course, and I think that's why you're putting those that like tape saturation plugin on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of easy to fall in love with those kind of plugins, but I would just suggest backing off on those a little bit. I'm hearing like you don't want it. Those things work when you notice if they're gone, but you don't notice that they're there. You know, you kind of straddle the line. So like when Quinn's vocal came in the first song, I noticed a lot of harmonic distortion. Did you have it on that?
Yeah, no, actually, well, so the Grunion one, that's Quinn's mix. It's just a rough mix, and Yeah, there's. I don't think he put any of the tape
It might be
saturation on there.
because it's the reason I asked is it might just be because it's summed to mono here, which causes some things to
Yeah.
clip, and so that might be what I'm hearing.
I don't know if you can hear my. Can you hear
But
my voice right now or no?
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so no, that was ran through an Art Pro MPA and VLA, which gave it that
Uh-huh.
tube saturation. And on that
Yeah.
particular night when I made the mix, I was like, we need all the saturation. So I just cranked it through it. It was
so
not
yeah,
done
you
very
kind of fell in
tastefully.
love with the effect. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but it's a learning curve, you know.
yeah.
You got to do
I-
first, you have to
I
overdo.
like it. I like it. You know, in those old recordings, they were trying as hard as they could to not
To not
have-
do that. Yeah.
And now we're going the other way.
Yeah, and now we're
Yeah.
you know, emulating it. But
Yeah.
and again, I heard it on Ray's vocal also.
Oh, okay.
But again, that just might have been the plugin, or it might have
Yeah.
been just because it was summed to mono.
I would love to send you the file, and if you could give me like another some more feedback on the mix, that'd be cool. If you heard it,
Yeah.
like the actual
no.
recording.
But you've made a lot of great choices in terms of your arrangement, and I like where you're going with the horns. It really does seem like you're comfortable working in the style of all those cats from the early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably
those-
have-
those horn lines sounded really good, actually.
Oh, thank you.
You know, one thing that was kind of bugging me a little bit, and this is just a stylistic thing. And though that era, especially in the '60s, the drummers always had this kind of, you know, that was somewhere between straight eight and swing feel. It was
Yeah.
straight eight, but there was a swing feel.
Yeah, kind of dragging almost.
Like swing 16ths. almost.
Well, yeah, a little. There's a little swing in the 16ths or in the eighths, and when you come in with a more of a straight eight feel in drums, it works a little bit against that. It's hard. It's a hard style because basically what happened is you got a bunch of these guys who've been playing jazz for 10 or 15 years who all of a sudden said, I can make money playing soul and R&B. I'm going to start playing that. And so it just came out with this swing, and it's a great feel. It's hard to emulate.
Yeah. I think that first track that I played earlier in like that soul playlist kind of has that feel. It's like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like kind of dragging, kind of swinging. And that
Um,
the interesting about that band, it was the Aquatics, and that song was called "Where Is Love" in 1972. That band was in high school when they released that their only album,
Yeah.
and it's like an amazing soul album, and I can't believe that they were in high school.
I'm going to have to get a hold of your playlist, man. So I think you're doing a really good job of capturing the sound. There's also, you got to also realize another thing about this sound. It was dance music. Even when it's a ballad, there's got to be high energy. So I just listen with those kinds of ears, the high energy ears. Even when you've got a slow groove, is this getting people out on the dance floor? That was really something that people were asking in those days.
Yeah.
You know, it came from the church. I mean, it was a merging of popular and jazz and church music, and church music is always leading towards something. You know, it's always leading towards that climactic moment. So I think there's something that you got to keep that in mind when you're doing these tracks.
Okay, I see. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So the first song, very personal to you, obviously, because it's about your brother, and I'm sure that played into your decision to sing it. But did you think of just having Quinn sing it, or did it just seem like that song is too personal to have someone else sing? This is the kind of thing that happens in bands all the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. It was an idea, and we did actually practice it the first few times with Quinn singing. But I think I just wanted the really high voice, and Quinn has really strong low voice, and so I still need to work on my falsetto voice. But I even thought about having my sister sing it. She sings, which would
Yeah.
kind of that's cool, still like
Yeah.
personal,
Yeah, we even
And,
experimented going an octave, like singing. I was singing an octave down,
Yeah.
But because of the way that his melody was originally written, those upper structure notes within the melody they're becoming more muddy. You know, like if a major seventh becomes what is that, like a minor second?
Yeah, like the beginning of the vocal
So
melody,
just-
like go and fly away, whatever. It's like it's the seventh going up to the ninth. So just, you know, it's not really, I don't know, it sounds better high, sung high.
Anyway, my question is more about, you know, the decisions you have to make in a band than what the decision was. You know, you mentioned it became something different when you played with the band, and you know, we see this all the time in the songwriter showcase, where a song comes in and then out being something very different. So yeah, that was my question about that. I mean, if you end up performing it once we can perform,
Yeah.
you know, you could even experiment with changing the key to the upper range of Quinn's voice, you know.
True.
Or just work on your vocals, man. I actually like your voice. You're just a little shaky at times.
Yeah.
So just work on your vocals.
I definitely
That's
will.
true.
Yeah.
You could actually lower it a tiny, like a hair, like a semitone or a whole tone.
Yeah.
And then you'd be, you know, you were hitting the notes. I'm not saying there's a problem with your vocals so much as
No, but they
you know,
definitely could be stronger. And I know, I mean, I'm no vocalist. I don't spend nearly, I mean, any time like practicing. And so, it's definitely something I want to improve, like a falsetto voice, especially in the grunting, because that'd be cool to have a strong, like low Jim Morrison-y voice like Quinn's, and then contrasting with like a really high, you know, I don't know, like falsetto voice.
Yeah.
Practice that, man.
I'm gonna train him.
Other questions that other people have?
Any questions for anybody else, guys?
I do have a question, but it's not. It's just regarding what was the name of the unit of that reverb in the studio that you use? Like the Real Reverb by someone.
Yeah, it's Real Reverb. Professor Weiner, do you know the name of the company?
I think it might be Demeter. I can't remember.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I just googled it. You better get one, Quinn.
I know that's on the list.
It really is. It's this real spring reverb with a microphone, you know, and a spring and a driver. So, Ray, are you there? I have a question. Yeah, I have a question for you, Ray, about the collaboration that you just did. So, what was it like? Just emailing files around, or did you were you able to work face to face? I don't know how old this is.
I have a mic at home. It's the LA 220. So I started building my own bass traps to like lightly treat the room. So I just recorded it in the room and sent it to like via Google Drive to Jacob. But it took me a week to write that, and like there's not a lot of creative inspiration to draw from like in the house, so I decided to just write about that, like what quarantine feels like for me. And listen to a lot of the tracks that inspired Jacob and tried to like keep still that old school type of melody, but have my own, like, just the way that I like to sing melodies, just fuse the two together. So yeah, it was really fun. I put a lot of trust in him to like mix it and everything, which is something that I don't like to do. So yeah, so that was cool to see that, you know, I could trust someone in that way and let go of a lot of the things that I try to do myself and still see like a really good product.
Cool. What are the lyrics? I think I didn't really pay attention to the lyrics that closely. I was listening to the music.
Ray, you sent me them, right?
Yeah, I did.
I can put them up on the screen. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
I really like the lyrics, and then I love Nell's verse too.
Oh my God, yeah, the line about Nebuchadnezzar. And
I know. The whole time I was mixing it.
Rhyme made me smile.
the whole time I was mixing it, I had no idea what he was saying right there. I was like, I think I need to ask him to redo this. I can't make out what he's saying. And then like I realized that yeah, he was saying Nebuchadnezzar, which is really cool. I never heard that word. I didn't know what like who that was or anything.
We'll have the same question for Nell in a minute.
Okay.
Here we go. All right.
You might have just been flowing there, right?
He said he was just talking.
No, see, no. What
Going through
happened?
his thoughts all casually.
It's Nell. I mean, it's Ray's fault because this is not the first type of song I've worked with Ray before. I say for to be an artist, it's kind of hard to find other artists that blend with you well enough, like to where it's just like if you put them on a track together, they're like at least always have something good. Like it's always gonna be good. So I knew when she put that down, like Ray act like she just write whatever. She writes like some powerful lyrics. So when they hit there, they just put me in the mood to write. And I'm like, all right, cool, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I think I've asked Noel to write a verse for almost all my songs because we just work really well together. Yeah.
Here's the lyrics. Wait, can you guys see?
Yeah, those are great quarantine lyrics. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, like the first picture that came to my head when I was listening to Jacob's track was driving, and just like my favorite place in California is the highway. Like driving to work, driving to school, just driving. Because I come from Hawaii where like the roads are really small. So like when I'm on the highway, it just feels like I could go anywhere. So I just like incorporated different things that I see as I'm driving, which are not like traditionally the things people miss, like graffiti or whatever, but I just miss like the rebellion and the freedom of being outside. And then try to make all of that fit into a rhythmic, like tiny verse.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes like when you zone out and watch TV to not like feel so sad, you realize you're not even watching TV anymore. So just putting in that thing, how it like lockdown can be immobilizing sometimes.
And Glenn, what about your verses?
Well, when I first heard the song, I didn't even know Ray and Jacob was even doing the song. So I've been asked Jacob like last year, like, yo, bro, like when them keys, like I need to hear that so I can like go ahead and write something to them. I've been wanting to work. So when they were like, oh, you're in class and professor was like, oh, you should add a rap verse. It felt like, you know, that moment in the scene where everybody just turned and look at that one person that just did something they shouldn't have done. Like, that's how I felt. And I was like, all right, cool. So I got excited. But when Ray sent it and she sent her lyrics, the quarantine for me, I already knew that's what she was talking about. So when I automatically read the hook, like travel back to sunny days, like graffiti on the highway, it like automatically like put me in the mode to just write like a picture story of just how the quarantine been, like laying on the couch feeling lazy. I ain't really got a lot of sleep. Like it's like I'm dealing with a job that I don't like, and their politics and how people are acting during this time. It's very selfish, kind of like putting people in a fire. And it's like, oh, okay. And that's how Nebuchadnezzar came out my head. So that's why I was like, all right, I'll write that. And that's just how it came. That's just great.
Any more questions or comments from anyone? So we should probably wrap it up. Great job.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.